Hey everyone, it's Glenn of Vegas Backyard Prepper, and today we're making sauerkraut. Okay, so today we're in the kitchen. We're going to be making some sauerkraut with the last of our little cabbages that we had growing in the garden. And as you can see, they're kind of small. They're just the last little stragglers that we had. Now, when you're doing the sauerkraut, you're going to need a couple things. You're going to need some mason jars, wide mouth. Not the regular mouth, because if you go with the regular mouth, your weights aren't going to fit. You set these on top of it to keep it below the level of the water, which you'll see. And then it's also good to have what they call this is like a cabbage packer. I'm not sure the actual name for it, but we use this when we're packing our jars, when we're canning and making sauerkrauts and stuff like that. You're also going to need salt. As far as ingredients, cabbage and salt, that's it. Now, what you want to do, and you're also, it doesn't matter if you have them or not, it's easier if you do. You're going to want some fermentation lids. They've got a little valve on them to let the gas is out, but doesn't let air back in. So we've already got some of the cabbage cut up. We still got some more to cut up. So you just want to make sure that there's no gross stuff or anything on the cabbage, especially if it's from your garden, any kind of dirt or mildews or anything like that, which can happen in the garden. Not a big deal. Just take the outer leaves off, throw them in your composter. You want to make sure it's not wilty. You want it to be a nice fresh head of cabbage. And cut the stem off, and then I cut it in half so I can get the core out. Ooh, this is a big core. So we get the core out. And then all you do is you just cut it against the grain of the cabbage like this, and then kind of chop it up a little bit so that way it's not big chunks, but you also don't want it to be finely shredded like you would for coleslaw or anything like that. And just give yourself nice thin, basically however you like your sauerkraut to be. Some people do chop it up more like a coleslaw. And you don't have to really break it up right now at this point. All you're doing is just you're getting it into your bowl. Now, some people go by, for the salt, they go by the number of heads of cabbage. I always find it's better to do it by weight. And so that's why we have our kitchen scale. So we're going to weigh how much cabbage we have, and And the general rule is 3 tablespoons of salt for every 5 pounds of cabbage. So be mixing this all together. So I've got some like smaller pieces from the leftover from the coleslaw, and then the bigger pieces will be mixed in with that. So I'm going to get the rest of these heads of cabbage cut up, and then we'll be back and go to the next step. Okay, so we got our cabbage all cut up. And now we're going to find out how much we have by weight. So got my kitchen scale here. I'm going to put the bowl on it first and then turn it on, so that way then it doesn't count the weight of the metal bowl. Make sure we're set on pounds. Yep. And we're just going to start putting our cabbage in the bowl. This will tell us how much salt we're going to need. Okay, so that's like 1 pound 4 ounces right there. Probably going to have to do this in 2 batches. I'll probably have to do this like 2 pounds at a time. There we are, exactly 2 pounds. So it looks like we're going to have about 4 pounds of cabbage. So I'm going to have to use just a little less than 3 tablespoons of salt. So for this first batch, I'm going to have to do a little bit of math. So 3, actually let's go with 2.5 pounds. So that way it'll be easier to do the math. It's Sunday. So I'm really not going to try to break it down that way. You go 2 pounds, 8 ounces. Right there. So that right there is 2 pounds, 8 ounces, so 2.5 pounds. Set the scale off to the side. And we're going to need a teaspoon and a half. So give me one moment. I'm going to step off camera for a sec to get my teaspoon measure. Alrighty. Nice little baking tool here. Got teaspoons, and tablespoons. We actually need 1.5 of these for this right here. And of course it's got a shaker on it, so we pop that off. Just put the salt on like this. And we want to go up the line a little more. There we are, and then a 1/2 tablespoon of the salt. So now, for this, all you do is you're just going to mix it up. Make sure your hands are clean while you're doing this. Because we're going to be, even though we're fermenting it, we're going to be actually what's called lacto-fermenting, which doesn't involve milk, by the way. It's the bacteria produces a lactic acid in the fermentation process. So lactobacillus.
Another train derailment, dude.
So just going to mix it up like this. Once it's all nicely mixed up, and as you're doing this, you can already feel the salt pulling the moisture out of the cabbage. You're going to do this, and you're going to use your masher and just kind of pound it a little bit, just kind of. This gives it a little bit of an assistance with the salt to get into the cabbage and start pulling all that moisture out. Don't worry, doing this, it doesn't affect how crispy the sauerkraut becomes. Yeah, you can definitely see already by like how wet my fingers are, because this cabbage was dry. That salt is already pulling the moisture out of your cabbage. So what you're going to do is you're going to let it sit now for about 30 minutes. And then we'll pour off the liquid, save it in a bowl, because that's the liquid we're going to use to top off our jars once the cabbage is in the jar for the fermentation. And we'll be back in about 30 minutes. Okay, so it's been about half an hour, and you just want to kind of go through, just give it a good like squeeze. You really want to kind of squeeze all the liquid out. And what it will look like when we do this, you'll see down in the bowl there, you'll see all the liquid. That's all the water that's been pulled out by the salt. So that's kind of what you're going for there. And you can use your cabbage masher here and just kind of just mash it. Now, filling your jars, what you're going to want to make sure of is that after your jars are full, you still have enough room to leave water and still have 1 inch of headspace. So the water level only comes to about right here. So that means you probably want to leave your cabbage about 1 inch below that. So we're only going to fill up to about this level right here with the cabbage. So since we are doing a little piece in my hand, since we are doing 2 jars, we're going to have 2 funnels. That way I can kind of keep them even. You just want to kind of mash it down in. I'm just doing this like we would with canning, just to keep any cabbage and stuff off the rim. You know, we're not going sterile like you would with canning. mash it down. You want to try to pack this down in here as tight as you can get it. Now, don't worry about the funnels. We're just going to do this old school. It's going to be easier with smaller handfuls, so you just do a little bit at a time. Mash it down. You want it packed nice and tight. Now it looks like we're going to need one more jar. Now I only have the 2 fermenting lids, so we're going to have to do another technique for the 3rd jar. Connor, if you go grab one more wide mouth jar.
Mm-hmm.
And then we'll also need a plastic lid. Kind of doing this on the fly a little bit. This is another technique that you can also use. Oh, and we also need one of the pucks. Since these 2 are already full, and we still have a bunch, we're going to try it in this jar and just use a regular plastic lid, which isn't airtight. So it will allow any gases to escape. We're going to do this the exact same way. Pack it down nice and tight. Yeah, it's gonna make a little bit of a mess. That's one of the things. Anybody who's got regular house, regular kitchen. This is our home kitchen. This isn't any kind of studio or anything like that. This is where our meals are prepped. Just a little bit ago, all the kids had their lunch, and they were cooking right behind me. And you can see like our knife block, our garlic, our pot holders, kitchen utensils. This is our home kitchen. We're a small channel. We don't have big old studio setups or anything like that. Drop a little bit there. Just make sure that your surfaces are clean. Get rid of this last little bit. Put it in each one. Okay. Those over in the sink. So now let's just make sure we got this packed down nice and tight. And you'll see that as you do this, it will create more of a brine. So this is the liquid that we had left over. That's not going to be enough to top off those 3 quart jars. So what we're going to do, we did already actually, is we made up some more brine. The ratio you want to do is 1 teaspoon of salt per 1 cup of water. So I just grabbed 4 cups of water. You want to make sure it's filtered water though. No, no tap water that could have like the fluoride and stuff in it, which will inhibit bacteria growth. So you've always, use filtered water, bottled water, or something. No tap water. We filtered the water a couple times and then mixed the salt in. 1 cup water, 1 teaspoon salt. So, actually, to keep from... Oh, actually, I almost forgot a step. So now, one of the things I do kind of clean up a little bit as we go here. Especially if you finally chop the sauerkraut, what you're going to want to do is put something over the top of it to kind of keep those little pieces from coming up. And while I like using the glass weights, sometimes that doesn't quite always work. So what you do is you get one of the bigger leaves from your cabbage, and then you can take your lid and just kind of put that on there like that. Trace around it. Some people will use scissors, whatever. I find this is the easiest way for me to do it. Just make sure you don't cut yourself, that you're careful at all times. But you grab the leaf of your cabbage and you can take that, put that down inside here. Right over the top like that. So that way it'll be just like that, and that'll keep the majority of the little pieces under control. And then your weight will go right on top of that. Let me cut these others out really quick because I need 2 more. Now this leaf was already pre-washed and everything, came from the garden. We've got one or two more cabbages out in the garden that are not quite ready yet, but they'll be ready here in the next week or 2, I would say. Just like that. And then what I do is I just try to, any little pieces that are stuck to the side before you put the brine in, I try to get them out because you don't want anything really floating above that leaf of cabbage. Because anything that is floating up there runs the risk of introducing non-productive bacteria. And then this will go to our chickens. Connor, can I get the strainer? The metal mesh strainer?
Okay.
I want to introduce those little chunks. So what I'll do is I will use this one. just mix it all together. Okay. And then you just fill it up until you get about 1 inch of headspace. Put our weight in. Now some pieces will kind of squeeze out past that is perfectly normal. And the majority of them will not float. Okay, so a little more. Right there, that is 1 inch headspace. And now we do the same thing for the other two. I went ahead and put the weights in these ones already. That way then it won't stir them up as much. Let's see how we're doing here. Oh, we got a little ways to go yet. Okay, 1 inch of headspace. Alrighty. Now the headspace isn't quite as important as it is with canning. You want to have at least 1 inch, so that way then as it ferments, it's got a little bit of room so the gases can sit there rather than it bubbling up and over. You don't want to take it all the way up to the top. You want to give yourself at least 1 inch, and that's what we did here. Now, like with canning, because once the fermentation process is done with these, we will be canning 2 of them up to put on our long-term pantry shelf. But as with canning them, wipe down the rims of your jars. And then we put the fermentation lids on. These 2 are going to be on snug. And then the plastic lid will go on, but it's not going to be snug down. And that's it. And then we'll do a follow-up video here in about 1 month when these are done fermenting. So we're just going to leave them right here on the kitchen counter. You want to keep them, room temperature. You don't want them to get too cold, too hot, but just a nice even room temperature. And if you leave them on your kitchen counter here, that way you can keep an eye on them. Make sure there's no film or anything growing on the top. You know, make sure like there's no pieces floating up and you know, basically molding at the top. You know, if you see a piece float up, you can just open it up, take a spoon and just kind of scoop it out. You're good to go. So, if you guys like our channel, like the videos we put out, subscribe to our channel, share it with your friends. We're also on Instagram and Facebook. And if you want to see how I grow these items in my garden, I do have some other videos. And I shared with you in my last video how I plan out my garden a little bit using Seed Time, which is a free garden planning app on the computer. It's in the beta phase right now, but they're still accepting beta testers, so to speak. You can go in, sign up. They do have some tiers where you can do like paid paid tiers on the Seed Time app, which gives you some extra additional functions. They also have classes, tutorials. They also have a store where you can buy heirloom high quality seeds. So check it out. I'll put the link for it down in the description. But, you know, like I said, you know, if you like our channel, subscribe, check out our Facebook, check out our Instagram, and that's going to be it today for Vegas Backyard Prepper.